And welcome to the Suppress Herald, the local news in Maine and beyond. And basically, what we talk about the politics being local, and so is propaganda, and nothing's changed. It's kind of interesting when a newspaper has to blow their own horn on being, you know, unbiased, that they're fully biased. And that's what they start off with in the Sunday paper in the opinion section. The opinion editor at the Maine Trust for Local News, which is owned by the National Trust for, or I call National Distrust for Local News, which is a billionaire owned propaganda machine buying up local newspapers so they can control all of the media and make sure they can control everything you think. And it's being very successful because you see what's going on in our entire country and society these days. People are behaving like they're just pawns in a game that's being played by billionaires and people wanting to control the masses. And it's very effective because you see just insanity out there. And it's becoming extremely evident to a lot of people. But those that are bought into the propaganda have been totally, I hate to say it, but they've been totally brainwashed into doing the bidding of a handful of people. And we're starting to find out the people that are funding the riots in LA and are funding the 50501, 50, 50 states, 50 whatever. And as one people, it's a new organization and no doubt funded by the same billionaires, George Soros and on, that are managing Black Lives Matter. We're finding out that they're the same people that basically orchestrated and funded the riots of 2020, the Summer of Love. Yeah, the Summer of Love that destroyed billions of dollars of property, attacked federal facilities, and murdered people. Many people were killed in those riots. And now we have the new Summer of Love, 2025, 5 years later, and here we are again with a national organization paying for and getting all these really idiots that are bought into this propaganda and are going out and doing their bidding. They're making their signs and they're going to the streets. And, they say thousands of people, but it's really a matter of, when you got 300 million people in the country and you have thousands of people in the streets, that kind of tells you it's a very, very local, angry, and hysterical mob of a very, very small minority are out in the streets trying to rally against Trump. And you have to dig deeper, and unfortunately, our media do not. They do not go behind the scenes to find out what's behind all of this. So let's start with the Suppress Herald and their opinion editor's opinion piece in the Suppress Herald on Sunday today. It is the 15th of June. And this is the title: Our Commitment to an Opinion Section from and for Maine. Yeah, controlled by billionaires from afar. Since last fall, our opinion section has been in receipt of many more letters and op-eds than a small staff can get around to. It's a privilege to have a readership and a contributor base that is so engaged. She doesn't say that is so diverse, as in diverse opinions, as in conservative and liberal, just that is engaged. In 2025, not every publication is so fortunate. Pronounced political change brought about by a new presidential administration has resulted in an outpouring of public concern, praise, scorn, hope, noticing, and querying. While we're engaged in all of that too, we're going to new lengths to ensure that our focus remains where it belongs: on what's going on in and around Maine. Bullshit, suppress Herald. You aren't looking at what's going on around Maine, not in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to talk about what you're not talking about. You have no such thing as reporters out digging on real things. It's just propaganda and repeating it. So she goes on to go through the whole thing with Maine Trust for Local News opinion section is not carried any syndicated or wire copy op-eds from places like the LA Times and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, liberal writers from other publications. So they stopped that, probably because they had to pay for it. Because they're going broke and they don't have the money to pay for opinion pieces from opinion writers that probably need to get paid. So that would explain that, but that's not what they're telling you. They lie repeatedly, or they've lied to themselves and they don't even know they're lying to you. But that's where we are. The Suppress Herald is now has to put in here the opinion section is for Maine and about Maine, except we're not going to publish anything that's contrary to our political beliefs. They don't tell you that part. So let's look at just the really, really interesting dichotomy we have with this is just today's Sunday paper. And the big thing was the day of protests yesterday, Saturday, paid for by billionaires through a new organization, the 5051 group, and they had these protests across the country. And here's the title of this front page, main front page, picture of pride flags and, protesters. And I don't want a dictatorship in this country. I want democracy. Well, Donald J. Trump was elected overwhelmingly. I think that's what democracy is about. And he's doing what those people that elected him asked him to do. And it's really unbelievable that it's a democracy if they're in charge, but it's not a democracy if they lost. And this is what liberals do. But what's really interesting is here you have on the front page, and it's a huge, multiple pages in the paper about these protests that are happening all over and all of this stuff. And no mention of the reality of what Trump is actually doing, which is arresting or rounding up convicted criminals and, murderers, rapists, burglars, child molesters, all criminal, illegal immigrants, rounding them up and deporting them. Now, when you have the immigration raids happening and they go in to arrest a convicted criminal and deport them, and they go into that apartment, do a raid to grab that person, and they find other illegal immigrants, they can't just turn their back. Who are you? Are you here legally? No. Okay, well, you got to go too. The reality is, illegal immigrant is illegal immigrant is illegal immigrant. If you're not here legally, you knew you came here illegally. You knew you didn't. If you snuck across the border without declaring yourself, without saying, I want to come to America, you knew full well when you came here that you were an illegal immigrant. And so if you get caught and you're sent home, then that's the law. So that's what we've got is this whole front page all about protesting Trump enforcing immigration laws, which were not done under Biden. And nowhere in this paper, anywhere, is there reporting and nor has there been in the last year, has there been reporting on the catastrophic impact of unchecked illegal immigration coming to America, and especially because they're so focused on Maine, they don't want to talk about the impact of massive illegal immigration on the state of Maine, the destruction of our schools, the ability to teach and learn in our schools is gone because they've been overwhelmed by people that don't speak English and speak 40 different languages. 30% of the students in the Portland schools are immigrants. I'm not against immigration. Most people aren't. Trump is not. Conservatives are not. But what's happened is an overwhelming of the system, which is, if you read Rules for Radicals, which is about disrupting the entire country and destroying the country as we know it, it's about overwhelming the system. Illegal immigration is causing housing problems, problems with schools and learning, and massive problems with schools. It's causing homelessness. It's causing other things. The other major thing with open borders, which is tied to this, is the whole thing with fentanyl and other drugs. Now, methamphetamines are becoming a major problem. So you've got all of these problems that nobody talks about, but you've got protesters wanting to just continue down that road. What is wrong with these sheep? Sheep to the slaughter is really what it is. They have been manipulated and propagandized beyond belief. Look around you. What is interesting is in that same Sunday paper, well, excuse me, this is posted on Friday, but in that same suppress Herald is a letter, an editorial from someone in downtown Portland. And it goes into, this is the headline: Portland's arts district is officially in crisis. And that's in the opinion section. Business closures, addiction, and homelessness have this once thriving corridor in downtown Portland at a tipping point. You have people protesting in Portland at the same time, protesting to keep doing what we've been doing for the last 4 years, which is uncontrolled immigration, uncontrolled fentanyl and other drugs coming across the border and flooding into our country and into our state of Maine and into our cities, especially Portland, unchecked. The same people those people are protesting that Trump wants to stop that and make a change to that. And yet they're in the same city protesting a block away from where this person is talking about these kinds of problems. And it's interesting. It's over the past year, we've lost Coffee by Design, Starbucks, Broken Arrow, Local 188, Three Sisters Deli, Socology, Mr. Tuna, and Golden Lotus Restaurant. More than a dozen ground floor storefronts now sit vacant along what was once a thriving corridor. Landlords can't find tenants to fill their spaces, and the reasons for Rennie's, which is a statewide business, clothing and outdoor wear and so forth, closure makes it painfully why. These closures are not isolated incidents. They are indicators of a downtown in crisis. And it talks about, my small staff cleans up used needles and human waste to ensure that our historic building remains safely accessible to the library patrons, artists, community members, and tenants who rely on it. We keep watch from our windows or front door when we're concerned someone outside may be a danger to themselves or others. This goes on and on. A recent New York Times investigation laid bare how the opioid crisis in Maine has evolved. Overdose deaths in the state remain high, with fentanyl still the leading cause, but methamphetamine use is surging. The combination of meth and fentanyl is harder to treat and more likely to result in long-term psychiatric harm. On and on. And it says we need to deal with this. One way to deal with the fentanyl crisis is to stop the fentanyl. And the person that's most responsible for trying to stop fentanyl is being protested in that very same city that's going to hell in a handbasket. What is wrong with these people? What's wrong with these people is propaganda. They are sheep, sheep to the slaughter. They're being manipulated and used as pawns. They have no sense of reality. And that's the biggest thing here, is that we have an ongoing lack of truth, honesty, and reality in our press. It's totally driven by politics and agendas, and reality be damned. And it just continues to happen on and on and on. Here's another story in the Suppress Herald. And this is, really just rich. Angus King's Shelley Pingree defend U.S. Senator forcibly removed from DHS news conference. Secret Service agents at Secretary Kristi Noem's news conference shoved and handcuffed Senator Alex Padilla, prompting outrage from his colleagues. And this goes in, it basically says how Senator Alex Padilla showed up at Kristi Noem's news conference and without really identifying himself, without his pin that identified him as a senator or anything else, started aggressively throwing questions at Secretary Noem during a press conference, interfering, loud, disruptive, and aggressive. In the video, which nobody bothers to look at the whole thing, they show you a clip. They take it out of context. If you look at the entire clip, which I did, he is belligerent, yelling, and Secret Service agents. Now remember, all of the Trump administration, all of these administrators, all of these secretaries, including Kristi Noem, and virtually all of them, have been targeted and threatened and their lives threatened. Kristi Noem has Secret Service detail as the head of, Secretary of Homeland Security, okay? She's the head of the entire Homeland Security organization. She has a detail. You are belligerent and you're aggressive and not listening to those Secret Service agents when they say, back off, quiet down, we're going to have to ask you to leave. You ignore them at your own peril. And what they did was remove him from the room. And when he continued to struggle and defy them, they took him to the ground and handcuffed him. They acted appropriately under the under the consideration of the threats that they've been getting to all of these people. Look what happened in Minnesota. A deranged lunatic liberal showed up at middle of the night to state representative and senators' homes disguised as a police officer and shot them. Murdered two of them fighting for their life. We're in a dangerous age. Kristi Noem's security detail is not going to allow that kind of behavior. And now everybody's up in arms over that. And this paper does not accurately show this. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live news conference. They claimed erroneously that Padilla did not identify himself and said Secret Service believed him to be an attacker. They claimed erroneously. No, they didn't. You didn't watch the whole video. That's the extent of the suppress Herald's truth is a lie. Taken out of context, didn't watch the whole video, and that's what you get. And this is why people are out protesting. They think that, the Secret Service attacked a U.S. senator. He behaved badly, just like the U.S. Congresswoman in New Jersey who bullied and shoved and was aggressive and trespassed at an ICE facility, has been arrested and charged with crimes that could put her in jail for, I don't know, 15, 17 years. This is not the way we expect senators and congresspeople to behave. But that's not what gets written up in the paper. The paper takes one side of this. And not to be outdone, the Suppress Herald, they love to, you know, they've got their token Republican who writes in the paper. He's got the Sunday gig every Sunday in the editorial section. And his title of his editorials, Big Beautiful Bill is One Big Ugly Mess. So what I tell you is this guy, Jim Fossil, he is a fossil. He's a fossil of the old Republican Guard who are no longer exist. And Fossil should be put out to pasture just like the rest of the Republican deep state assholes. This guy is the Suppress Herald's token Republican. They say he's a Republican who basically is just a belligerent jerk who is never on the side of Republicans. But he's a useful idiot for the Suppress Herald and criticizing the big, beautiful bill. Typically, he's an idiot, and I'm not going to go into the details, but, saying that this is just going to benefit the rich and so forth. They mistake the rich for business owners, always in the tax code. And he criticizes the SALT credit, which in high tax states, you don't get to deduct as all of your state and local taxes from your federal tax bill. And he goes into that. But the reality is that small business owners are treated like wealthy, higher income earners because it's the business revenue that is passed through on taxes. You don't get to keep the profits, call it, your revenue, but it's figured into your taxes. Idiots like this should not be able to write these articles continuously because it's very, very misleading and it really is a disservice to millions of small business owners trying to survive with local, state, federal government doing everything they can to make it difficult to operate your business. That's what's happening. Trump is trying to alleviate that, help small businesses. Do we want to continue to see? I mean, I just read an article about 10 open spaces in downtown Portland. I mean, Portland's become just a cesspool. Liberalism has done it to Portland, but it's also they passed a very high minimum wage for Portland, for businesses in Portland, and on and on and on. Portland has become an extremely hard place to do business. Not to mention it's ugly if you're on the sidewalk, if you're business is a storefront business. It's just plain ugly anymore. People don't like parking and all the rest of it. It's expensive. And so it's becoming hard to do business in Portland. And then we've got this jerk writing really inaccurate information about the tax code. And he's the suppressed Herald's theoretically conservative, useful idiot, the token Republican that they like to put on the editorial page every week. So here we are protesting the president who's doing everything in his power to fix all of the problems that we look around and see on a daily basis. Really, what you're talking about here is, again, useful idiots, just plain tools being manipulated, going out with their signs, paid for by billionaire manipulators, and the Suppress Herald doing their little part with suppressing real information and not talking about things that are really important. Another one that came out, and I will get a shout out to the local digital news service, the Main Wire, and Steve Robinson is the editor of that, and he has the Robinson Report, is a call it a newsletter, and he does podcasts, and they're doing some real reporting. It was Steve Robinson that broke the story about the Chinese grow facilities all over Maine, hundreds of houses being bought, leased, and turned into little miniature grow facilities. That's a very large business. And then, finally the Suppress Herald gets involved and reports on the fact that these grow facilities that are illegal are using toxic chemicals and insecticides and, basically growing dangerous weed and no doubt black market selling it without the checks and balances that are in place on the legal growers. And it took them forever to even report on the story. Another story they're not reporting on that the Main Wire and Steve Robinson Report have come out with is a nonprofit here that got about $2 million in no bid contracts from Governor Mills' administration. And they don't really do anything but sort of get out the vote and advocate for immigrants, illegal immigrants included, and low income people. But they haven't really defined what they actually do. But they got $2 million of our taxpayer money on no bid contracts for the state of Maine. Where's the Suppress Herald investigating that? They talk about they're all about local now. They're not about local. They're about local. They're going to go after former Governor LePage, who's running for Congress, and they're going to have article after article of nefarious little things that they dig up and write nasty articles about Republicans. Meanwhile, they're ignoring what's obvious on its face. And it's just nothing but propaganda. And they're showing it all over again. So that's where we are today. The protests have happened, come and gone, probably will be gone from here. You'll have some little ones out here and there. But the reality is, the Trump administration is going to keep doing what they're doing because that's what we elected them to do. And if you're an illegal immigrant who's committed crimes, you probably should just buy a ticket and go home. And if you don't, I'm happy to pay for your ticket rather than paying the price of what illegal immigration has done to this country and will continue to do if we don't stop it. And with that, don't forget, politics is local, so is propaganda, and there's no question that the suppress Herald? Nothing but propaganda.